Hello and welcome everyone to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine. I'm the president of Democrats of Greater Tucson and I'll be your host today. And we're just thrilled to have our speaker today, Regina Romero, the mayor of Tucson. How are you, Regina?
How are you, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Today, Mayor Romero has agreed to discuss local COVID-19 responses, and she's going to tell us about her first 6 months in office. She's the first woman and the first Latina mayor of Tucson, as well as the only Latina mayor in the 50 largest U.S. cities. So welcome, Regina. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Larry. Really appreciate your work and all that Democrats of Greater Tucson are doing. I have a special place in my heart for the Democrats of Greater Tucson. This is the space where I originally kicked off my campaign, my first campaign for city council back in 2007. So I appreciate the Democrats of Greater Tucson and am always happy to be here with you. You know, I do want to say that I think these are the first most eventful 7 months any mayor in the history of Tucson has had. You know, if anything, this pandemic has shown how truly resilient our community is. Tucson's a special place, and our people are special and really truly resilient, and I'm really amazed on how we're getting through this together and how amazingly supportive people in Tucson have been, and how smart our residents are when it comes to what's best for response from the mayor and the council in this type of crisis that we're living through now. A lot of people tell me, oh my God, Regina, it's incredible what you're going through as a mayor with this pandemic and the pending economic doom that might happen. And what I usually like to say is two things. I'm not the one that's just going through this, right? I'm not alone in this. We're all going through this together, and it's happening to all of us. And the other thing that I also say is that there is a reason why things happen. And from this, from the ashes of this crisis, I know that we will come out a better community. And so, you know, it just, it makes it easier to stand side by side my colleagues on the council and Tucsonans in this crisis. And I believe in all of us, and I believe that this crisis will make us better. So our COVID response. Months have passed since we instituted the first set of policies aimed at slowing COVID-19 spread. The city of Tucson actually acted way before many major cities in the country. But in my jumping out ahead as a city, it really I did not take it lightly, right? Calling out the stay-at-home order that I had to sign, the emergency proclamation that I had to sign on March 17th. It took a lot of time and input from experts in public health, from my colleagues on the council, from the city manager, the city attorney, my wonderful staff that have been quick and effective, and of course also input from what I was seeing nationwide. And so back in March 17th, I woke up that morning knowing that I had to respond quick to this crisis. And so we had seen that the Bay Area had made a call in terms of stay-at-home orders. The previous day, on the 16th of March, I put together small businesses, restaurateurs, the hotel industry, and workers, and gotten their input in terms of like where do we go from here, because what other major cities in the United States were doing was to close entertainment venues, close bars, ask people to stay at home as much as possible, telework, telecommute, and have restaurants for delivery and takeout only. And I wanted the input from the small businesses that were about to be effective. And those small businesses said, hey, we need you to lead, and we need a uniform policy here in Tucson, and we will support you. And so we took the step of doing the emergency proclamation on the 17th of March, because that's St. Patrick's Day, and we were hearing of huge parties around the city, and so we just wanted to make sure that those gatherings did not happen, and because we were thinking the spread would continue. Our city has been ahead of the curve every step of the way, frequently leading the way statewide, and it has really brought me together with mayor colleagues throughout the state. That partnership that I've seen in mayor colleagues in Flagstaff and Phoenix and Tolleson, and most recently with Tempe, with Somerton, with Nogales, other cities throughout the state have really responded, and I'm very proud of the partnerships that we're putting together with them. Again, I'm very proud of how our community has responded in coming together to lift each other up, and really taking heed, taking this crisis and this pandemic seriously, and really responding to what mayor and council have done. Me with the emergency proclamation, and then of course my colleagues on the council with their twin ordinances and their ratification of my call in the emergency proclamation. I've sent many letters to Governor Ducey, asking him to act swiftly and quickly and with a uniform policy statewide. As you all might know, I put out my emergency declaration on the 17th. He came a few days later, I think a couple of days later on the 19th, made the same calls that I had done. But on top of that, he preempted cities, towns, and county health departments throughout the state from doing anything different than what the governor was proclaiming in his executive order. Some of the letters that we have sent to Governor Ducey is requesting priority testing for first responders and additional PPE support. We've sent letters to Governor Ducey to take action, swift action, most recently, especially on mandatory mask requirements statewide, because we as mayors feel as though a person that, a town that does not have a mandatory mask requirement, their residents can easily travel back and forth around the state, and that's where the spread continues. We are seeing some sort of, according to public health officials, we are seeing some bend of the spread downwards. And we are trying to correlate it. We're trying to see if it's correlated with the mandatory mask ordinances and the additional steps that the governor has taken recently. But if we were to have a mandatory mask ordinance statewide, the percentage of people that stop preventing the spread is better. I've also had lots of communication with our congressional delegation, specifically the Southern Arizona Congress people, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick and Congressman Grijalva, and very good communication with Senators McSally and Sinema, sending them letters on, and personally speaking with them on what type of help we need as a city of Tucson in terms of additional funds, and what helps with our community. And I think that those calls with the senators and our congressional delegation were very effective when it came to seeing the result in the CARES Act package, which was that second package that came in. We saw direct assistance to Pima County and the city of Tucson because of those conversations, I believe. $95 million came directly to the city of Tucson CARES funds. And unfortunately, some Congress people decided to have direct funds only to cities above 500,000 people. And as we saw here in Arizona, funds came to Pima County, funds came to Tucson, Phoenix, and Mesa, and then funds went directly to the state. The funds that went directly to the state to help other towns and cities throughout Arizona that were under 500,000 people saw less money. Those towns and cities saw less money coming from the governor directly to the towns. It took a long time for that money to get to the towns and cities. And so we learned that direct funding is something that's really important to be able to get the most amount of money and to get it directly to the cities. So I'm advocating again, there is discussion that there will be a second round of CARES funds. And so we're having the same conversations with Congressman Grijalva and Kirkpatrick, with Senator Sinema and McSally, about how important those funds, that second round of CARES Act funds, are going to be sent directly to cities like Tucson here in Arizona and throughout the country. Let's see. In late May, Tucson Mayor and Council voted on a strategic plan to distribute the $95.7 million that the city received in CARES funds. The plan focused on distributing funds through an equity framework to reach the most vulnerable and underserved in the community as quickly as possible. The plan included $22 million in forgivable grants for small businesses and nonprofits. It included $5 million for rental and utility assistance, funds for distance learning and Wi-Fi access for our kids and the schools, and actually also for our workers that were working from home, many of them. We also included funds for domestic violence and victims of domestic violence, because we are seeing that those situations are exacerbated for women and people and children and families that are victims of domestic violence. So we want to get those funds so that these individuals can get out of a situation where they are living under domestic violence. Also, we are assigning funds for childcare programs, and childcare funds for families, food delivery for seniors and homeless communities, among other areas. In addition, the plan includes about $38 million in funding for continuity of city operations and services, and that includes meeting the payroll needs of our first responders, as well as any projected budget shortfalls ranging from millions of dollars in lost revenue because of businesses being closed. I believe that the best investment we can make is in our community. So whether it be helping small businesses, nonprofits, making payroll, aiding Tucsonans with their utility and rent payments, or investing in domestic violence and childcare, those are issues that are very important. We are making sure that we are crossing our T's, dotting our I's, and putting those funds out there to the community. We also included $3 million for workers and their families. We created a We Are One, Somos Uno Resiliency Fund, and are working through the Community Foundation for Southern Arizona for the nonprofit piece. We're also working with the Women's Foundation for Southern Arizona for the workers and families piece, and with the YWCA for the small business grant components. We will be putting out information as to how people can apply for these funds, as well as the rent and utility assistance in the very near future. The logistics are being done, and the information putting out that those funds to help small businesses, nonprofits, and families are going out pretty quickly here. Another step that I've taken 2 weeks after the George Floyd killing by a police officer in Minneapolis, and at the recommendation and in coordination with local faith and community leaders, I created a Racial Equity and Justice Council. This idea I had put in my platform when I was running for mayor back in 2019, and one of the faith community leaders approached me after the George Floyd killing and said, if there's any time to create this racial equity council, now is the time. And with his help, the NAACP and other community leaders, Black leaders in the community, as well as others, we have started creating the Racial Equity Council. And we're basically assigning this mayor's racial equity council to, let's see, okay. So this is what we'd like for the Racial Equity Council to do. We want to make sure that they're reviewing and advising on policy recommendations that address disparities in health, education, neighborhood investment, job training, and policing strategies that disproportionately affect communities of color. We want to ensure equity and justice, that we're using an equity and justice lens is applied to current and future policymaking and budget discussions, and assisting in the deconstruction of institutional racism. Also conducting an equity needs assessment for the city of Tucson. And we want to also engage with the Police Chiefs Advisory Council, the Community Police Advisory Review Board, and the independent police auditor. We want to make sure that we're looking at the Community Police Advisory Review Board and the independent police auditor so that we can restructure, overhaul, reimagine these community committees so that they can be effective for us. Again, in the budget process that we've been going through, we have talked about issues that we've been really listening to our community. One of the things that we keep listening, that we keep hearing from community members, is that we need to reimagine how we provide community safety here in Tucson. And based on the input and feedback that I've heard from community in talking with even Chief of Police Magnus, with our city manager, with my colleagues on the council, I presented a community safety pilot program framework that mayor and council approved about 2 weeks ago, and that we have created. We're going to listen to it again tomorrow, and I'm going to put a little bit more meat on the bones, but we want to make sure that we're seeing outside of police how we can provide community safety and wellness. How do we invest? And actually, as part of the budgeting process, we put on a budget that we hire 8 social workers, new social workers, that we also hire a Housing First director that implements the widely accepted Housing First model for our homeless and houseless community, which prioritizes providing permanent housing first to people experiencing homelessness, and then wrap around the services that these individuals and families need. We also, 2 weeks ago, as part of the budgeting process, we also put aside funds for an equity needs assessment. The equity needs assessments will conduct a comprehensive equity audit of the city of Tucson, look at the overarching goals of where we identify and recommend policy solutions to address any inequities in the city of Tucson. So we're going to look at how the city of Tucson, how we work internally, how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion inside human resources, inside the city team, and then externally, how we approach diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of our budget and how we put funds for the needs of Black and Brown communities and low-income communities throughout the city of Tucson. One piece that I'd like to include in this conversation that I'm very happy we were able to do as well in our budgeting process, we put aside funds to hire a climate action plan consultant. Again, we talked about climate change in 2019. I made it one of my central planks for my campaign, and I want to make sure that we continue the conversation, right? We continue pushing the envelope on putting together a bold climate action plan for our city so that we become a climate resilient city. Again, just like the pandemic, we have to be prepared. We have to take action now before we see climate calamities that affect us personally here in the city of Tucson. We've already seen and witnessed climate calamities happen throughout the world. We are seeing drought, we are seeing extreme climate events throughout the world. And here in our beautiful desert, one of the things that concern me the most is the access to water. Without water, we cannot be. And so because we are living in drought and we are living in a desert, we have to make sure that the city of Tucson is active on acting on climate and creating a climate resilient city. And so to address this climate action plan and amplify current efforts, the mayor's office is partnering with the University of Arizona and Arizona State University to co-fund a position out of the mayor's office to address the warming climate in Tucson. And one of the thoughts to that particular position is that, so the position will be funded from the mayor's office, from the University of Arizona and Arizona State University. And the reason that I approach both universities is because both universities are doing amazing research and work on climate and climate change. And so what I thought would be unprecedented, it has never really happened here in Arizona, and I don't know if it's happened throughout the country. This partnership with our state universities, ASU, U of A, is to bridge the research that's happening at their universities, bridge research, and bridge it to make it public policy. And so working with President Crow and President Robbins has been really amazing. We've already hired Fatima Luna as our new environmental and sustainability policy advisor for Tucson. And Fatima will lead and manage the implementation of the climate action plan that includes efforts such as the Tucson Million Trees by 2030 campaign, and focus on reducing the city's climate footprint. The Federal Transit Administration, also the work that we did. As soon as I got elected, I went to Washington, D.C. and went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, but I also visited many of the agencies in the federal government. One of my visits was to the Federal Transit Administration, so that I can advocate for a few grants that the city of Tucson had applied for. One of them was for zero emission buses, and the other one was for a bus rapid transit system that we're taking a look along the Oracle Stone 6th Avenue to the airport project. We received recently $3.7 million to purchase new zero-emission buses for the city of Tucson. And we also received a grant from the FTA for the bus rapid transit system. And that was 900 and some $1,000 to start the planning for it, which we're very, very happy for. The mayor and council also instituted a green stormwater infrastructure fund that will be dedicated to integrating green infrastructure into our neighborhoods throughout the city of Tucson. Lots of work, lots of decisions that we've made. And throughout all of this crisis, we've been able to push the envelope on some of the goals that I talked about when I was running for office, and that have been implemented from input from my colleagues on the council, from a mayor and council retreat that my office led. And so for the first time, mayor and council led a retreat, a budgeting retreat, where we really set priorities of what we felt was important for the residents of Tucson, and gave direction to the city manager to budget according to the input and the goals of mayor and council. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions and a conversation with those of us that are joining us today.
All right, thanks very much, Mayor Romero. A question that comes out of today's headlines is that in the city of Portland, Oregon, there are federal troops that are taking over the city. 2,000 federal troops. They're unmarked. They have no names on the uniforms, and they're just throwing people into unmarked vans and driving them away. What would your response be if Trump ordered the similar stormtroopers to come down here in Tucson?
Well, I've faced that similar question earlier this year, as a matter of fact, when the protests from communities started because of the killing of George Floyd. The governor offered Army National Guard to the cities across Arizona that were seeing protests. I said absolutely not, and talk thoroughly with Chief Magnus about it. And both him and I and the city manager agreed that Army National Guard or troops would be counterproductive to. But how do we make sure that calm people down, that we have dialogue with the community and assure them that we're listening to their concerns? And their concerns are very legitimate, right? I know that we saw protests throughout the country. We are seeing still some. We know that in Portland, the mayor and their council are very concerned about Trump just sending military.
Mayor Romero, the screen is frozen and